You are now listening to the sound of sanity. This sound will continue for the duration of the program. Hey everybody, welcome to Sound of Sanity. I am Nathan, your humble and obedient host. We've got the preacher's teacher of sanity right there. It's Benjamin Solzer.
Hello.
And Ben, why don't you introduce the other guy?
It's Jacob Menzel, pastor who's the master of sanity.
Hey, what's up?
Hello.
Hi everybody. Welcome to a little bit of sanity. I want you to clear your minds, close your eyes, picture an ocean. The waves lapping against the shore.
You're a ship at sea, gently
sinking.
Gently.
You've fallen overboard. The ship is sailing away. You are alone.
People,
Roy Hobbs has left the building.
Are taking you down.
Down into the depths
Of repressed grief.
Darker and darker it gets. The cold water fills your nostrils. You're drowning. A kind of serenity comes over you.
Is this all a metaphor or is it real?
It's a metaphor. You're not really drowning.
Oh, okay.
How could you be? You're listening to Sound of Sanity. Guys, what dispatches from the world of insanity or the world of sanity do we have today? I know what I want to talk about, but I don't know whether I should start with
I
it or
have
not.
so many things to talk about. I have 3 categories of things I want to talk about.
Well, you have so many things, you categorize them?
I categorize.
You want to tell us what the categories are? Maybe I'll see if my mind fits into a
Well,
category.
I have a Christian culture category, which is just really one target that I want to
I think that might be the same
bomb the
target.
crap out
Yeah,
of.
I think my goal with this episode is bomb the crap out of that target.
Okay, and then I have a pop culture and politics category, and then I just have a books and podcasts category. Just some little things. I wanted to follow up on Run the Mile You're In with Ryan Hall and a couple other things like that. So
Okay. Well,
maybe we'll end there though, because I think it might be fun to just. I've got another new book that I'm reading and some other stuff like that. It might be fun to leave people with some things to
save the suggestions for the end.
Yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Well, shall we bomb the crap out of the target?
let's bomb them.
All right.
Bombs away. Crash and burn.
Ouch.
Mav.
All right.
Top Gun reference.
I see. Which I would not get.
Before we go to the article that you want, that I think we're like loaded for bear on,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to set that up with a different article that I found.
Sure.
Now, the Gospel Coalition, this is not an article that they have published themselves. This is an article that they linked to, so they're promoting it.
Mm-hmm.
This is from rootedministry.com, and it is called Turning Red. Will it be okay if I'm not good enough for my parents? So this is a movie review of the new Disney Pixar film, Turning Red. And this article understands the main conflict of that movie being the question of what if I'm not good enough for my parents? And it concludes with, well, I'll just read the closing paragraph. But the older I get, the more I hang on to this truth. For those of us in Christ, all that we need, we already have. I'm not good enough, nor will I ever be, but Christ is. And his perfection is what I can claim as my own, not because of what I've done, but because of his death on the cross. I hold securely, yada, 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 yada.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a movie, Turning Red is a movie that points kids to Jesus and points all of us to Jesus because nobody's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And it deals with the difficult question, what if I'm not good enough for my parents? And I don't know, maybe it's dumb to lead into, this is not the Gospel Coalition, but they did link to it. And I just think it's one more little bit of background for what we want to hit. Because if you guys don't know, Turning Red is a not so subtle movie about puberty, about a woman. The text of the movie is she's getting her period. Right.
She's turning into a red panda.
She's turning into a red animal. Okay. So the text is puberty. The text is menstruation.
Mm-hmm.
The subtext, and you can find a lot of people debating about this or talking about it. You can find articles about how this is part of Disney and Pixar's problem, is that this is only the subtext, but the subtext is as a lesbian allegory. And so there are scenes where the lead character is drawn to girls and to dancing with them instead of with boys and things like that. And so it's a lesbian allegory as well, or at least debatably a lesbian allegory. The fact that it's debatable is unfortunate according to the LGBTQ plus IAQED community. The fact that it has any subtlety to it at all. And so the point of bringing that up is because I think if you engage in reviewing movies, you should be able to, I don't know.
Read them.
Exactly. Anyhow, according to Rooted Ministry, actually, it's just, what if I'm not good enough for my parents? Good thing Jesus is.
Well, do they deal with it at all?
They do talk about how the film gently addresses the onset of puberty.
Okay, good.
But it is primarily a story of the generational conflict between parents and children of immigrant families.
So here again, we say this all the time, but I hate it when Christians don't see subtext. But what I really hate is when the whole world's like, hey, this is the subtext. And Christians are like, do, 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 do. Like when they are like, we are making this movie as an LGBTQ plus allegory. And we're like, well, it must be about puberty. In other words, it's not like it's hidden. It's like a series of symbols that you have to decode. They've given us the decoding. You don't have to be smart. You don't actually have to be able to read subtext. You can just read articles in the news where they tell you what their movie means.
Yep.
And it's just ridiculous that we are that blithe and that blind. But anyway, go ahead, Jake.
So the only reason I wanted to bring that up is because I was on the Gospel Coalition's website looking at really profound articles, like this article about how the UNC Duke basketball rivalry taught me to love other Christians. That's an article there because, we're now one in Christ. And so Christ has conquered the dividing line between Duke and North Carolina.
Good.
Completely trivializing the work of Jesus in the gospel
Wow.
and the unity that we have in Christ. So I was looking at these things, but I was there to look up this review that they did of the movie Encanto.
Yes.
Can I just, interpose? There is an article on TGC by our favorite writer there, Brett McCracken, on Turning Red.
# release the McCracken.
Oh, did he do one on Turning Red?
He did, and he's basically condemns it.
Okay. Well, I missed that because I missed it because I scrolled down and it was the third around the web link that they linked to. And so it's just right there on the front page. Like you don't have to scroll very far, and that's what they link to. So McCracken does condemn Turning Red. Why does he condemn it though?
He condemns it because it's about letting out your inner beast. It's about basically letting the flesh run your life, which is slavery, not freedom. And he says he doesn't mention anything about lesbianism, but he does say it's the same ideology that undergirds trans rights for kids is in this movie. So he's good, basically.
Yeah, which
good for Brett.
Which doesn't surprise
Props to you, Brett.
He's more bad when he tries to make a positive point than when he tries to make a negative. When he tries to talk about the Christ-like gaze of Terrence Malick or something, that's where he really flies off the rails.
Yeah, I mean, here.
Well, I mean, which is just to say, when he likes something.
When he likes something,
he's bad.
He feels the need to baptize it in a way that's blasphemous and wicked, and we
and
cannot.
When he doesn't like something, then he can approach it with reasonably clear sight.
Yeah, so, which he does.
And when he tries to split the difference, he also gives us something like his Tarantino reviews, which were terrible. Yep. But so he's capable of being bad. I would also say maybe Brett has gotten, this is so condescending, but maybe he's wizened a little bit in his years.
Gotten a little better.
And maybe he's listened to some podcasts. I mean, if somebody released a bunch of episodes that said like, Nathan Alverson stinks.
You might listen to them.
I bet I'd listen to them, even if I didn't agree, even if I didn't promote them on social media. I might listen to them. I don't know. Anyway.
Unhelpful Advice in Turning Red by Brett McCracken is on. You have to scroll down a bit, but it's right there on the homepage. So There you go. Cool. Good job on that, Brett.
Yes.
Bad job, editors, on linking to this other article.
Which Brett McCracken is one of the
head
editors.
It's probably, it's like, oh no, people will be sad and upset that we had a negative one about where can we find a positive
Well,
one?
they're a coalition, Jake. They represent many points of view. Mere Christianity is...
Is that right? Who do they represent in the review on Encanto, I wonder?
That's a great question. Who do they represent? Nobody, really. Because I think most people just like Encanto if they like it, or if they're a Christian who doesn't like it for certain reasons, or a pagan who doesn't, then they don't like it. But this person, as we'll get to, feels the need to really baptize Encanto.
Oh my
Which
goodness.
is just... And by the way, one other piece of context for this article, it came out the same week that all the footage got leaked from, what was it, a shareholders meeting or something?
Yep.
Where they were just like, we want to explicitly pursue an LGBT agenda.
So in the last couple of weeks, there's been some kind of Disney cruise molestation cover-up that you can go read about. Disney has leaked, and I think when Disney in a shareholders meeting leaks something about their agenda, in their attempts to push a trans LGBTQ agenda, it's intentional. They're signaling.
Well, when you think about how good they are actually at keeping secrets when they want to,
Yep.
This didn't get out because they didn't want it to get out.
No.
And even the things where, like, we knew Maguire and Garfield were going to be in it. Of course we did. That was the whole hype. That movie made $1 gazillion.
Yep.
Because they played with the idea of, are they or are they not going to be in there? It was all very intentional.
Yeah. So you have the opposition to the public opposition of Disney and the fight that they've engaged with Ron DeSantis about this bill in Florida that prohibits teachers from teaching sex education to like kids 8 and under, I think it is, which is, we've labeled in the media's labeled it the Don't Say Gay bill, because what they want to do is cast it as a stifling trans and gay and LGBTQ. Why gay? I don't know, because it rhymes. I don't know why the boys get the privilege here.
It is a masterful piece of branding.
But it is, yeah. So Don't Say Gay, and it's hard to like even pull anything but that, because they've done a really good job of making it that. But what it really is just a little bit of legislation that says, I don't know, maybe before 3rd grade, parents ought to be the ones talking to their kids, and teachers shouldn't be talking to their kids and introducing sex ed or anything like that.
Of any type, by the way.
Of any type.
It's not, don't talk to my kids about trans. It's, hey, let me introduce my kids to sexuality, generally speaking.
Yeah. So Disney opposes this, and so there's...
The real story, the CEO the new CEO, I forget what his name is. Chapek, he said he wasn't going to comment on it. And then he had to walk that back in like 24 hours
And then it kept walking back. And then we had these leaks from this shareholders meeting. And then we had the thing about the cruise molestation cover-up. And then we had, all in the context of this, and we just had this discussion of Pixar has a problem.
Mm-hmm.
They can't go explicit enough with their gay text. In their mainstream films, they can only do little shorts that have text. And then we find out that the new movie Lightyear is to have a same-sex kiss scene in it.
Right.
So this is Disney. This is Pixar.
They are telling us who they are. It is.
Hold on, guys. Breaking news. Just forget about that stuff. 56 minutes ago, Disney sets aside 80 acres in Florida for low-cost housing. What do you guys think about that? What's your hot take on that? Let's talk about some other news. Right? Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
Eep, eep, eep. That's my... I can't do a cricket noise. That's my cricket.
Disney's in the middle of a PR cycle going into the fact that their rights are about to lapse again on all of their Mickey Mouse and everything that should be public domain by now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that they get special passes for.
That whole story is fascinating. You read about Sonny Bono laws and the number of times that powerful people have gotten things to not go into the public domain so that they can continue to profit off of them. I mean, Disney and his heirs are long dead at this point.
Billions of dollars tied up in extending copyright that should have been on properties that should be in the public domain by now, by all.
I don't know why we're
rights.
talking about this when I type in Disney news. What comes up is I can save big on Disney cruises. I want to learn about that. Why don't we cover the real stories that are important? The Disney one.
I just don't know.
Wants us to read.
Let's try to turn this into a This Week in 1984 episode.
So, anyhow, that's what's going on with Disney. Everybody's trying. The whole conservative world's trying to cancel Disney, or acting like we're trying to cancel Disney.
The Daily Wire. We're putting $180 billion into children's entertainment. Why would you give your money to people who hate your kids?
They're groomers.
Yeah. Why would you give
Which
your
they
money?
are.
Which they are.
They are absolutely groomers. This is not new. This has never been new.
Mm.
What's interesting is that we're at least in a little bubble, or a little point in time, and we may revert. Disney's super powerful. They got a lot of money. They're really good at PR, and they're really good at pumping out material that we want to give to our kids. But right now we're in a little pocket, a little bubble, where it seems like at least the conservative world is woke to what Disney is and what Disney's doing, and it's become mainstream acceptable to just hate Disney's guts and to acknowledge that they're just a bunch of groomy pedophiles who want to groom your children and who shape their stories and their movies and their narratives in that direction with real intentionality.
Yeah, I guess I should say the reason I was being mocking about the Daily Wire is not because I don't think that conservatives and Christians should create good content, although that is a complex issue that we could talk about. But the whole idea of, oh no, Disney's turned against us. We must raise the battle flag. It's like, if you didn't see this 20 years ago, then I have some sympathy for simple Christians who just don't follow entertainment news, and all they know about Disney is it's the VHSs that they grew up with or something.
Anyhow,
Like, come on.
enter the Gospel Coalition.
Yes.
That premier
Into the fray.
That premier bastion of reformed, conservative, Christian cultural commentary to discuss the movie Encanto, which is worth discussing because it has a lot of weird and wild stuff in it. You know, you have people who get these superpowers, but there's this one woman who gets the superpower and she gets all buff and stuff, and it's weird, and there's a bunch of weirdness. And I don't know. Some parents aren't comfortable with it. So
Let me just say at the top, I like Encanto. The soundtrack, obviously, absolute fire. Best thing that guy's done since Hamilton. I thoroughly enjoy Encanto. I think the progressive stuff is lame. I think the sister plot is unfortunate and sinful and stupid, but it's a very colorful, pretty Disney property movie with a great soundtrack. So just thought it would be worth throwing out. As I think the only person who's actually seen Encanto
haven't seen it
in this room.
Haven't seen it.
I think you guys would probably enjoy
it.
Encanto if you could get over the resentment of the annoying cultural cachet that it's had.
It's the only reason that I haven't seen it or shown it to my kids. And I actually feel bad about it because by denying it to them, I'm creating a mystique about it that it doesn't deserve.
Yeah, I'm glad I watched it. I watched it on Christmas Day. It came out that day. We just wanted something to turn on in the background for the kids. That's exactly what we did. Some of the adults ended up just keying in and watching it. And it was fine. And it was fun. And it had a lot of stupid progressive stuff, but very easy to discern, and whatever. It was like Frozen 2 or something. Like it was fine. Except for it had a way better soundtrack than Frozen 2. It had an awesome soundtrack. So, and I'm always happy when I hear those songs come on, which is 40,000 times a day. So
you just listen to the Encanto soundtrack over and over.
Yeah. I mean, that's all I have planned. But that being said, this Gospel Coalition article, we need to talk about Bruno. Now, you may know from the movie, we don't talk about Bruno. That's like the whole thing. But this article, we need to talk about Bruno. And then the little sub thing, Disney's Encanto points to the savior.
Oh my gosh.
Can I just say, before we get into this might be the most, of all the Gospel Coalition articles that we've ever talked about, this one might be the most, period. This one might just
the most.
It's just the most.
This is remember back when we coined the phrase popportunism? You take anything from pop culture and you make it into a Jesus thing. This is the most of that. I mean, I guess Christian Grey being an adversary to Christian love.
That was
pretty amazing.
And that lady even wrote her own poem.
But that was like 10 years too late on that series.
Yeah.
So it wasn't quite the same.
Well, and this is also a couple months after the crest of...
Yeah, this literally came out on March 31st, so we waited a good 3 or 4 months.
Right, and to be fair, Encanto took a few months to hit the zeitgeist, but this article is still at least a month or two late if it wanted to hit the crest of when these things were happening. So, I guess I could just take us through this article real quick.
Do it.
So this lady talks about, her name is... No, sorry. I just assumed.
His name is Ryan McDonald.
You know, I think I was being nice and assuming it was a lady.
Deserves to have his name.
Yes.
He wants it. He is the pastor at Southlands Church and the regional director for Foster the City in Southern California. And that's a thing that we should just know about this guy.
Student at Western Seminary.
He wants us to know.
He and his wife live in Brea, California with their children.
And this is his only article at the Gospel Coalition.
Okay, so he starts with as any Gospel Coalition article must, he starts with a very relatable, everyday premise, which is, every day I hear my 4-year-old daughter telling Google to play Encanto. So they're like, yeah, I bet a bunch of people relate to that. And yes, they are correct about that. And then he throws out some stats about, we don't talk about Bruno's got so many streams.
Standard
and it's
formula. This is important in case you didn't know. It's a big deal in case you didn't know.
It explains the premise of the movie, which I guess I'll just read for anyone who actually doesn't know. The mysterious, estranged Uncle Bruno proves to be the focal point of Encanto's plot, which follows a magical family, the Madrigals, in a hidden Colombian place called Encanto. Okay, no, I won't. I'm too bored by it. All right. So, as I watched the movie, I couldn't help but notice parallels between Bruno, the rejected, truth-telling prophet, and Jesus Christ. I doubt any of these parallels were intended by Disney. And it's usually wise to avoid reading into movie characters more Christ figure than there is. But to riff on Sally Lloyd-Jones, Encanto is a movie that whispers Jesus' name. Here's what I mean. Now, Encanto, Bruno, let me just say, for those of you who haven't seen the movie, which is the two of you, Bruno is a comical figure. He's set up to be this villain, but he's actually just a sympathetic, rejected family member whose his prophecies got him in trouble because he accurately told people things that they didn't want to know about themselves. But he's kind of the sad, broken, lonely figure when we meet him. And he's funny. He's a funny Disney character, a pretty successful comic creation. But he's portrayed in this song as like the villain. You think he's going to be the villain of the piece. That's the whole juke that the plot's doing. So, number one, these are the ways that he is like Jesus. Number one, the prophet is rejected and silenced for truth-telling. Like Jesus, Bruno is a prophet without honor in his hometown. The well-meaning uncle speaks truth to those he loves in order to prepare them for what's to come. Yet instead of receiving the warning, those who hear his words only blame Bruno for bringing disaster. This is true. Like Bruno, the truth-telling prophet Jesus is also rejected by his own followers, even Peter. Number two, the rejected and silenced prophet is actually the one holding the family together. Isn't it nice that Jesus holds the Christian family together? Isn't that just the best way of expressing what he does? The Madrigal family thought Bruno had run away. Yet in Maribel's quest for truth, she discovers he's actually living in the walls of their family home. Not only that, he's also holding the family together, even though he's been shunned. Bruno, the rejected son, the one interceding on behalf of the very family that betrayed him. And then this has an exclamation point. What a picture of Christ while on the cross.
No.
He yelled it. I mean, I just feel blasphemous reading this, but I must.
You're not the one committing the blasphemy here. You're just reporting.
I'm just reporting it. Okay, and then we have a D.A. Carson quote. Bruno, too, grieves that his family doesn't know what they're doing.
This is not a D.A. Carson quote.
Sorry.
He just quotes D.A. Carson.
Yeah. The beauty of Christ's selfless love for his family, isn't it? So he quotes actually Christ saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And then he says, Bruno, too, grieves that his family doesn't know what they're doing, but he loves them anyway and readily forgives them. Number three, the family is healed only when they receive the once rejected prophet. Encanto's resolution comes when Bruno is embraced and received back into the family. Ba-da-da-da-da. In a similar way, followers of Jesus are called to believe and receive the miracle of the person of Christ. Ba-ba-da-ba-da. Bruno is by no means a perfect picture of Jesus. There are places throughout the film where the Christological resonance breaks down. Still, in presenting Bruno as a once rejected, truth-telling prophet who, when received by faith, brings healing and holiness. Encanto offers a shadow of our true Savior.
Received by faith. Did he just write that?
Yes, he did. It's a gift when popular movies offer fodder like this for theological reflection. I like to picture this guy like smoking his pipe, sitting on a hill, like just reflecting. It's a gift when popular movies offer fodder like this for theological reflection and gospel connections, especially with young viewers. So, even if your kids sing, as my daughter does, we don't talk about Bruno. Perhaps we should respond with, we need to talk about Bruno. And see where the conversation goes. Now, for long-time listeners, if you remember the early days when we were just ad-libbing Popcorn Coalition skets. Skets? Yeah.
Skets.
That's the word. Ben had a certain kind of thing that he would always ad-lib, and it is exactly in this. So
that's right.
Yeah. Just the whole, even if your kids sing, we don't talk about Bruno. Perhaps we should respond with, we need to talk about Bruno.
We need to talk about Bruno, friends. I mean,
it just writes itself.
It really does.
So the Christian Grey article is neck and neck, but I think this might be the most lapsed into self-parody that they are, because it's just so lame. I mean, the Christ-like gaze of Terrence Malick is comparatively a masterpiece of film criticism and theological reflection, compared to Bruno as a Christ figure. It's just the lamest Jesus juke that the Gospel Coalition could possibly do.
And they're doing it right at the time when Disney is showing its hand most clearly, and everybody is accepting the fact, finally, looking around and saying, hey, these guys aren't nice, and they don't have our kids' best interests at heart. When the whole world is in the liberal progressive world is really reaching and stretching to defend Disney. Mm-hmm. The slander, let's talk about that slanderous word groomer.
Now, why do these QAnon people have to see sex and everything?
People who have grooming is a real thing, and people who have actually been groomed are really hurt and offended by applying this word to
the grooming that
Disney is doing, because it's emotional and mental grooming, but some people have been groomed physically by actual literal pedophiles who aren't literally pedophiles in the way that the literal pedophiles at Disney are. But it's just like, this is the kind of bending over backwards. You can actually read people having these arguments right now, trying to defend Disney for the way they're coming after your kids to indoctrinate them in their trans LGBTQ ideology. Right. And it's like I said earlier, in the midst of all of this, Disney lets us know, or Pixar lets us know, that there's going to be a gay kiss in the new Lightyear movie. Okay, so now here it is, Lightyear, which looked to be a really cool, fun movie, cool premise, cool idea, building on a cool property in a really unique and original, creative way with a good cast, and it just looks fun. And now they've let us know that they're going to put a gay kiss in it.
Right.
This is just what Disney is and what Disney's doing.
And it wasn't the week that they did that. It was within 24 hours that the Gospel Coalition was like, here's our article on Bruno as someone who has Christological resonance. It's pathetic.
And I don't know what else there is to say about that, except that, I mean, if you were to just like, who is working for Team Disney here? Who is building the narrative that Disney is great and Disney's safe and Disney's fine, Disney's okay for your kids, and we don't need any discernment when we come to Disney? You've got over here the literal trans ideologists on one side. You have everybody else on the other side. And where does the Gospel Coalition line up in this cultural battle that is engaging the world, America, right now?
Discernment. I mean, they want you to discern Jesus
in everything Disney does.
That's right.
Everything Disney does has Jesus all over it. It doesn't matter if it's Turning Red, and it doesn't matter if it's Encanto. And there was a punchline that went without saying.
It went without saying. Yes, it did.
Well, so I had somebody ask me, I was giving a film lecture not too long ago, guys. The true story.
At what university was it?
The Houston Baptist.
Houston Baptist College
Houston,
or Houston Baptist University or whatever.
It was over Zoom. I did not travel to Houston. But in any case, I actually made a reference at some point in my talk to this stupid article. And so somebody asked me, like, okay, how do you find Christ in things, or what's the difference between, because obviously there is, as they say, Christological resonance in lots of movies. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between doing it well and doing it badly? And I guess I have my answer because I know what I said, but what do you guys want to address that?
Well, the first thing that I would do is I would start talking about Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, and the fact that what these movies all do and what all these writers do conscientiously is they take a redemptive arc because they know it has resonance, and they strip it of Christ on purpose. And then they put it out there because as a substitute gospel. And so Christians who look into these things and say, well, I see a redemptive arc, and so it points me to Jesus, they're a mile behind what's actually going on in any text like that.
Right.
So it's like they know exactly what they're doing. They've always known what they're doing. There's a whole book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, written by Joseph Campbell, built on the narrative typology of Carl Jung, trying to identify the key beats, the fundamental building blocks of any hero's journey that allows you to tell the story 1,000 times and put 1,000 different faces on that one hero. And it's built largely on the gospel story.
Well, I would go farther than that and say even before Carl Jung existed, the reason Carl Jung was able to pull these things out is because Christ is the creator and founder of the universe. The gospel story is the most important story. And so most stories tend to hit those beats.
Well, because they're imitating,
whether you're designing them that way or not.
The real true story of the world as God wrote it.
Right. It's actually hard to write a story that doesn't have quote unquote Christological resonance.
Yeah, I guess the only reason I want to go to Carl Jung there and not to the bigger picture reality that, well, this is just the story God told and is telling, and so it is the one story, is because of how cynical all the people who are telling today's stories are about it, and how shallow that read is comparatively.
It's incredibly shallow. I mean, the other thing I would say, and the other thing I did say about an article like this is these points of comparison that they act like have so much significance are not points of comparison that we would actually use oftentimes. Like, to take the example of Bruno as a Christ figure, there's actually not enough about Bruno for him to be an actual good type. There's not enough points of illuminating comparison for him to meaningfully evince anything that's Christ-like. I mean, for example, I could say Ben is a type of Christ because he's podcasting. And so he's imparting knowledge. And so he's a teacher. And Christ's a great teacher. And so Ben is a type of Christ. I suppose I could say that, but I could also say the same thing of Hitler. Hitler got up, I mean, to use the most hack internet example, Hitler got up and he addressed people and he imparted wisdom.
He appealed to the masses. He appealed to the poor and the needy of Germany who were downtrodden and felt abused and oppressed.
Right.
And he did so in the face of the Jewish opposition. Let's be honest.
Well, yeah, exactly. So why don't we say that why would no one ever be tempted to say that Hitler has Christological significance? Because while there are a few points where the comparison is apt, there are also a number of points where the comparison deviates. And if there are enough of those points at a certain juncture in time, it becomes not an illuminating comparison. To say that Gandalf is a type of Christ or has Christological resonance, everybody kind of understands what that means. He's a good guy. He's ushering our heroes on their journey. He falls into a pit. He comes back as something even more special. Like everybody kind of could understand that. To say that Bruno is a type of Christ, no average person gets any window into who Christ is from Bruno, because there's not actually enough things that track.
And look, The fact is, you could actually do what he says, and I bet he's done it with his kids. You could have that conversation. Honey, we need to talk about Bruno.
Right.
And you could tell your little girl all the ways that Bruno, your 4-year-old,
Yeah.
all the ways that Bruno is like Christ. Now, how helpful is that going to be to your 4-year-old?
Now she just has a picture of Bruno in her head every time she thinks about Jesus.
Yeah. Bad job. You're right. It was sticky enough that you could make your 4-year-old remember it, I bet. And it's not.
But it hasn't
help her.
It's like if you were trying. The thing I actually said in the talk was, if you were trying to give people a picture of me, and you said, "Well, he's like a watermelon because he's fat." Watermelons are round. Nathan's round. So if you've given an illuminating picture of who I am, do they now know something about me because they can picture a watermelon? No, because there's way too many other ways that I deviate from a freaking watermelon. And that's all that the gospel
Really?
Shut up, Ben. And that's really the kind of tenuous connections that something like this is doing. Bruno, anyone who actually understands typology on a theological side, anyone who's an academic who understands the study of semiotics, signs, signification, stuff like that, anyone who looks for symbols does not see Bruno and Jesus because there's not enough there. Just like you don't see watermelon and Nathan because there's not enough there. You have to really stretch and do gymnastics to make watermelon and Nathan work. And you have to do gymnastics. And what the Gospel Coalition seems to believe is because we can do gymnastics with anything, we should. And that's stupid and reductive and I think blasphemous. I think it devalues people's understanding of Jesus. Suddenly being able to compare Jesus to Bruno actually makes you understand Jesus less because you're suddenly confused by all the ways that Bruno deviates from Jesus, which are multitudinous.
And so you're not only confusing people about Jesus, you're also completely inhibiting their ability to read what's obvious culturally, right? Or in movies or in anything whatsoever. You're teaching them to make the most spurious connections to Jesus. You're muddling who Jesus is. You're messing it all up. And you're teaching people not to read the most obvious things that are actually in front of them in the first place. So it's just actively anti-discernment in every possible way. We're messing up and muddling the picture of Jesus, and we're messing up and muddling everything about a movie or about a book or about whatever it is that we're trying to read. We are engaged in a conspiracy to keep you blind to being able to read Jesus and to read the culture.
Yeah. Because
and
Bruno,
it's just actively, at this point, it's just actively evil.
Right. Bruno's an emasculated little comic relief character. He does not read as a savior in the movie, having seen the movie. He doesn't read as anything like that. And so you're just confusing. Well, once again, if you say Gandalf is kind of filling a Jesus, I don't really love that kind of thing either. But just as a comparison point, Gandalf is powerful. He's imbued with great power. He comes to save the day on any number of occasions, turns catastrophe into eucatastrophe. He provides a little picture of the kinds of things that we know Jesus does. And so saying like when he rides up at Helm's Deep and saves the day and all the white horses come charging down and we all cry, there's a little...
On the dawn of the third day.
On the dawn of the third day, as the hordes of demonic enemy are about to take out our heroes, and then Gandalf shows up, and we all get chills as they ride down. Like, you don't have to do a bunch of math to see why there's Christological resonance there. But, and if you see the Christological resonance, to continue using their dumb phrase, you maybe have gained a little something. But as Jake's saying, if you see the quote unquote Christological resonance with Bruno, you've actually lost something. It's actually devalued your idea of who Jesus is and confused it and muddled it because you're actually trying to like, especially if you're...
And it's nowhere more obvious than, as Ben was saying, when you do what he says to do, which is try to communicate it to your 4-year-old kid. Suddenly it becomes obvious what you're actually doing. You're now giving a picture of Jesus, and this Jesus that you're teaching your 4-year-old to picture is a Pixar comedic relief character. It's actively destructive.
Yeah, I mean that's why I actually like, as silly as it is, I actually like my watermelon analogy because I think it tracks. Like If you taught your 4-year-old to think of me as Watermelon Man, they would have a very inaccurate, destructive version of who I am. But they would understand that watermelons are round and Nathan's round. So I guess the connection's been made. They understand an aspect of my Nathanological resonance. But no, they don't. They don't understand me. So let us never talk about Bruno.
We don't talk
need
about
to talk
Bruno.
about Bruno.
We don't talk about
We don't talk about Bruno. No,
We do
no.
talk about the Gospel Coalition, though. We need to talk about the Gospel Coalition.
Well,
And we did.
as we've often said, people seem to feel such a. It's like that's why I wanted to say up front that I kind of like the movie and I love the soundtrack, because people feel so bound up about liking some of this stuff. I think what the Gospel Coalition actually exists to do is to ease people's consciences, because they hear whispers or they see the articles about Disney being a woke, broke corporation. And they're like, oh boy, now I feel bad. I wanted to buy my daughter the little shirt with Belle on it, but now I feel guilty about it. And then the Gospel Coalition's like, let us wave our magic wand and make it all go away. It's actually, it
You
has,
can baptize anything here.
right. It has Christological resonance. And then you can just kind of forget about it and feel good about it. It's like, no, you should have to wrestle with it. You should have to wrestle with who you're giving your money to. I've not canceled Disney Plus. I probably won't. I probably will buy my daughter a Belle onesie. You got to make your own decisions about that. But
If you've not been wrestling with this stuff before now, then you've not been paying attention. And so that's the other part of this. It's like, well, the Gospel Coalition needed to write that article because people feel bad about watching Disney and they don't want to feel bad. And they're there to tickle people's ears.
right.
To scratch their ears and tickle their whatever, scratch their itchy. What is it? Why is my brain?
Now I'm confused. I mean, I know.
Yeah, it's now that
it's
you've given us the bad version, it's hard to
hard.
reclaim.
I broke it.
People will seek.
Scratchy, itching ears.
Yeah.
Right? Itch, scratching ears?
I don't know.
Scratch,
It doesn't matter.
itching ears.
We know what we're talking about, guys. It's what they exist to do is to give the people what they want. And that makes them the enemies of actual real discernment. And you don't have to necessarily with any given movie be, oh man, it's all bad. It's all evil. It's all Disney. Therefore it's all evil.
Mm-hmm.
This is the way that we want to approach everything when it comes to discernment, because we don't want to have faith. We just want the tension of living by faith resolved for us, the tension of exercising discernment resolved. If it can all be about Jesus, then it's all okay. And if we can do the gymnastics and make it all about Jesus, then yay, we get Encanto. And if we can't, and Disney's a bunch of groomers, then everything is bad, and we can't have Disney, and we can't have Belle, and we can't have, Sleeping Beauty, and we can't have any number of other things out there. And so, oh man, I don't want to lose all those things. So I need to learn how to baptize everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the way that we all tend to think. We all want the easy answers generally. And the Gospel Coalition, as the modern day enemy of discernment, jumps right into the mix to show us how exactly to baptize everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is, you're just not allowed to do that as a Christian. You're not allowed to come to movies and watch them as a Christian with your brain shut off and a box ticked, yes, good, no, bad. That's not how we do things.
Yeah, I mean, it is so pharisaical, like classically pharisaical. Like, let me mediate the tension that you feel about God and his law by sprinkling a little pixie dust, giving you some extra laws and things over here, and you just do what I say, and then you don't have to think.
Yeah, and there are really good critiques or ways to critique a movie like Encanto and come to a decision and say, I just don't want to show that to my kids because I don't like the narrative building blocks and the way that it deals with the sexuality of the sister.
Yeah, that alone's enough to not watch the movie.
That's a perfectly justifiable reason to not show it to any of your kids. Somebody, I don't remember who I saw on Twitter, it was like the first time I ever saw a Christian have any kind of real discernment about a movie in pop culture. And so I noted it and I dropped it in our Slack channel and we could probably find it and tell you who he is. I don't know if he's good anywhere else, but on this, he was good. And he was talking about how just, hey, they turned her into a man when she got her power. Her power turned her into a man. It actually turned her into a man for a reason. They wanted her to look like a man for a reason. Mm-hmm. All of it was meant to acclimate you to the idea that women can be men and men can be women, and it can just be transitional.
Right.
Right? It's trans. And people are arguing, well, it's a magical family with magical powers. And so he says, yes, and they broke the rules of their own universe in order to make her look like a man. Because the person who has super sight doesn't get super big eyes. And the person who has it, they had a couple other examples. I haven't seen the movie, so I don't know what they are. But the one person who gets super strength does get super big muscles and reshaped in every way to look like a man. That's on purpose, right? So there are all kinds of ways and you should be able to see that when you come to a movie, and you should be able to talk about it. You should be able to engage it, and then you should be able to judge, is this something that I'm okay showing to my kids and talking about with my kids or not? And that should just be the practice that you have coming to every kind of movie that you watch.
Right.
Instead, it's Disney bad, or yay, Jesus is everywhere. Baptize it all. And that's why the Gospel Coalition is so unhelpful, because that is all they do.
Right. And by the way, in addition to that, if you've made a considered decision, Disney bad, and you've canceled your subscription and you're never buying another Bell onesie and blah, 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 the whole deal, more power to you. That's great.
That's fine.
What we're unhappy with is everyone suddenly reacting like, oh no, Disney bad, whatever do I do? Cancel, subscribe to conservative alternative.
No, there's all kinds of reasons to never show your kids anything Disney. That's fine. Disney, Marvel, all of it. If you want to burn it, that's great. There are all kinds of things worth protecting your kids from that even the most innocuous of Disney films have.
So what do you do podcast of it? In some cases, to provide an off-ramp, but mostly to provide an on-ramp to actual critical thinking.
Exactly. In every case, to teach you how to think about these things.
And then you make your decision about the off-ramp of it all.
Yeah. You want to get off, that's fine. But what we want at every level, because here's the other part of the problem. What a lot of Christians want to do is they want to just be like, well, I just don't watch movies, or I don't watch a lot of movies. But then what that means is the handful of movies they watch uncritically. The movies they allow, the places where they splurge, it's not that they don't watch movies, actually. It's that they just have the movies that are okay. Like, we were being engaged on this issue once recently by somebody saying that they never watch movies. How often do they actually watch movies? Well, maybe only once or twice a week. It's just like, well, that's more than I watch movies.
Right. If I'm watching a movie once or twice a week, it's for the podcast.
That's all it's for.
Because someone's holding a gun to my head.
Like, I can't remember the last movie I've watched that wasn't for the podcast. And we watch 2 a month.
Right.
So I can't think off the top of my... And some of that's because of March Madness basketball. So when we've watched things, it's been basketball. But still, it's just like, your idea of I don't watch a lot of movies is I watch 1 movie a week. That's a lot of movies, actually. So...
More movies than Martin Luther watched, I'll tell you that.
But because you tell because you tell yourself you don't watch a lot of movies, because you tell yourself that we're not a movie watching family, then that means that 1 movie a week, that's nothing. We don't have to think about that because we don't watch movies. I don't know what you think a family that watches movies. Why do you think that families are watching movies every night? I don't know what you think. Maybe that's what you grew up with. But
well, just to use the same example I've been using, I have not fully watched any of those Daily Wire movies, but I've watched enough of them, and I'm familiar enough with the Daily Wire guys. You'd be an idiot to cancel Disney and then uncritically, undiscerningly watch what they're putting out. I mean, we probably all saw the Jeremy's Razor ad, which was full of...
Didn't see it.
I have no idea what that is.
So Jeremy's Razor was Daily Wire. Harry's Razor canceled their advertising with Daily Wire because of some... So Jeremy Boring, the CEO, has now created Jeremy's Razor, which is just his own razor company. And it's like the tagline is a razor company that doesn't hate you or something like that. And he did, you know how people like to do these funny long form ads where a dopey guy's walking around and in the background things are set on fire and stuff. It was in that style. So he's like, finally a razor that's like actually for men and doesn't get into politics. But the whole ad is he's flanked by these 2 models with tons of cleavage, like really immodest outfits. It's like he's a manly man. But he drives up in a Camaro, and then he has like models helping him out. And it's like his idea of manhood is like James Bond circa 1965 or something like that. It's really gross, and it's really undiscerning, and their conservative audience is just gobbling it up. And it's like, these guys aren't retaking the culture.
Yeah.
A, they're trying to retake the culture from 50 years ago, which is a dumb plan. B, they don't actually have the moral sense to do it. C, the whole idea of meeting fire with fire on this kind of stuff is flawed, I think.
Yep.
But maybe that's another podcast. Maybe everything is another podcast. We've gone for a long time on Encanto right now.
Let's just keep going.
Yeah, what else?
Who cares?
What else you got?
Just something that you might not be aware of unless you pay close attention to conservative media, because this has been very quiet, except for the places where there's been some outrage. Oklahoma quietly passed a law to make abortion illegal.
I saw that. Crazy.
The governor has to sign it into law. It won't go into immediate effect by the way that it is framed. It'll have to be litigated in the courts. But as early as this summer, it could be that abortion in every form is illegal in Oklahoma. So, yeah, that's just worth knowing.
Meanwhile, Colorado, same news cycle, signed a law legalizing all forms of abortion up through 9 months. One of the most far-reaching and wicked versions of such a law on the books.
Wow.
That's evil. I didn't see that. That's why we do this.
Mm-hmm.
There were the remains of 5 babies found in D.C., I want to say. And they're trying to get lawmakers to look in, not lawmakers, they're trying to get law enforcement officers and the police and the stuff to look into it, because they were well developed enough. It's possible it was simply infanticide. Simply, these were born babies, and then they were dismembered, etc.
But nobody wants to look into it.
No one wants to look into it. You can find videos if you go looking for that, and you might be sorry if you do that, but you can find them.
Yep. Don't recommend it, but yeah. What else?
Did you see the Madonna video that everybody was talking about for half a minute?
I didn't hear anyone talking about it at all.
It's
for
just
even
a
half
little
a second.
TikTok video of her face that's all Botoxed and lip injected up and stuff like that. And the only thing worth talking about is she's 63 years old, and she spent her whole life chasing sex appeal as power and value and worth, and that's all that she's left with, and she doesn't have any. And it's really sad. And it seems like every generation has this, so every generation has to rediscover it. You know, they're aging pop stars, whether it's like, hey, Mick Jagger's actually pretty gross now. I guess he was always gross, but now he's really gross. You know, or whatever it is. Everybody has to rediscover it.
Yeah. Yeah, Madonna's an interesting case in that whole thing. Because to me, even in her heyday, she feels like somebody who felt ugly. Like if you actually just look at her face, she's not what you would think of as classically beautiful. It's a little bit like Lady Gaga or something like that. So, somebody who spends their whole life kind of cosplaying a certain kind of thing because they can't quite have it or aren't quite. For someone who's such an icon of 80s sexuality, the icon of 80s sexuality, the Marilyn Monroe of her generation, Madonna has never felt at all comfortable with her own sexuality to me. So, I mean, even when she does the movies that we remember her from are things like Dick Tracy, where she's dressed up like Marilyn Monroe, just kind of doing a weird thing. Like she's just a sad, broken person.
Yeah.
Don't be a material girl, listener. It won't lead to good things.
You guys been super excited about Elon Musk these days?
No.
I'm glad he bought 10% of Twitter or whatever.
No. You didn't know that, Ben?
No, I didn't. I've been in a hole.
So Elon bought 10% of Twitter. And what that means is he now has the largest stake in Twitter of anybody. He has like 5 times more than Jack Dorsey, its founder.
Jack Dorsey has like 2.5% or something like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he has just shy of 10%.
Billions of dollars acquisition, by the way.
Yeah, which amounted to like less than 1% of his net worth. So for you and me, it'd be like going out and buying a MacBook or something like that. You know, if that, maybe an iPad.
Oh man, that's amazing.
Yeah, but he now, which doesn't make him a majority stakeholder, but then he joined the board of directors, which actually caps his ability to own percentage much higher. I think 15% or something like that is the rule for a board member. So he can't actually have a hostile takeover of Twitter.
Yeah. Okay.
Although he can't have a unilateral takeover, he has enough ownership and enough influence that he can organize any number of shareholders
Oh yeah.
behind him to get done what he wants done. So I think probably Twitter's board thought it was in their best interest to pull him on the board.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But hopefully this is a step in the direction of
Free Twitter.
free Twitter. It'd be great.
That'd be amazing.
It'd be really cool.
Wow, if we actually had a public square that was like a public square where different voices could engage.
It'd be amazing, right? This is like the best possible kind of activist investment that you could imagine, I think. Because Elon Musk is concerned about Mars and concerned about the future of humanity and electric cars and things like that. I think in terms of investing resources, that's where that money's going to go. This is a social investment.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, I just think that's cool and worth mentioning. And
Oh yeah.
not that I have some kind of special take on it, but
No, it's cool. Yeah. I guess I don't have a special take on it either, but it gives me hope.
yeah, my dad's Starlink order went through, so he's going to be on Musk's network.
How much does that cost?
I think it ends up being close to $100 a month.
Okay.
But they live out in the country and don't have service. They've never had internet out there, apart from like DSL or something like that. And so he really wanted to get to move in the direction of high-speed internet if possible, and had been badgering local companies to run cable out that way. So I turned him on to Starlink, and he signed up and got on the wait list and ships, and will be on in the next couple weeks.
There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Kind of fun.
Yeah, that is fun.
You guys reading about anything else? Finding anything else out there that's exciting or interesting?
I just wanted to talk about Bruno today. I think that was my...
That's the main thing I wanted to talk about too.
I
just had a couple other little notes that I thought might spark an interesting conversation or not.
Hey, they're worth noting, even if they don't spark.
If we had more gas in the tank, if we didn't spend as much time talking about Bruno, we might have more to say about Elon. But
yeah,
I don't know that.
We did talk about Bruno.
I'll just mention this one thread that I put in our Slack recently. It's this atheist, leftist, Californian lady.
Yes, that was interesting.
And
I've seen stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've heard stuff like that for a while.
Yeah, this kind of thing is around. This is maybe not groundbreaking, but it's always, I don't know, I guess I haven't yet been acclimated to seeing it because I haven't seen it that often. But it's this lady who's like J.K. Rowling.
Mm-hmm.
She's not actually anti-trans. That's not fair to say, but she's going off on trans ideology, coming into situations where kids feel like they want to be a boy instead of a girl, or a girl instead of a boy, and saying that's bad. Don't let that happen. Let the kids process this naturally. Usually it goes away. Otherwise, you're going to trap them into a terrible situation where their bodies are mutilated and they'll never escape all the emotional and physical damage that caused. I don't know. Just again, someone saying basic things about sexuality to an extent. I
was listening to not long ago to somebody who actually had transitioned, talking about how all the psych evaluations they had to do, it's like a multi-year process of screening and psych evaluations and just different kinds of interviews and things where in the time period they had to live as the opposite sex before they could ever be permitted any kind of hormonal or surgical. And so it ended up being a multi-year process, and how that was designed for their mental health and safety, which is a load of junk in and of itself.
Of course.
But there was at least some kind of like process.
Let's make sure you don't have buyer's remorse.
Exactly. And you're not going to sue us, whatever it was. There were all kinds of inhibitions and all kinds of things, roadblocks thrown up. Just talking about how radical those hormones hit them as they started to go through the process, and about how destabilizing it was, and how they needed all the psychological help they could get to get through it all, and how you don't even need, like, insurance will just provide it, and on a dime with no question, not even a questionnaire you have to fill out now. and how if they had done the same thing, that it would have wrecked them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have made it through, and they might be dead now. They just can't fathom how irresponsible it feels. And it's, of course, it's all irresponsible, it's all evil, it's all wicked. But to hear somebody who has gone through the process talk about it was fascinating in and of itself.
Well, and then
definitely
what Ben Pagan would say is, even if you think that that's fine for the adult, like the fact that we're blithely pushing children in this direction, the teachers think that they're empowering children when they hide these things from their parents.
Right.
It's just nonsense, because even if you believe in this stuff, like, it needs oversight.
What all of this should make everybody do is believe in the demonic. I mean,
that's right.
The demons, we act so superior to ancient cultures in their worship of demons. The demons that wanted to kill and destroy and mutilate and
sacrifice the little kids on the altars and whatever,
and rob them of their innocence and corrupt them. Right? This is just like ancient paganism, and that is just what we have devolved into.
Well, when you look at what I just said about Colorado, we want you to be able to take a full-term baby, have it partially born, and then dismember it. That is a basic right, fundamental to your existence and your freedom. I just don't. There's just no other word than demonic for that. It's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, where did I just see something? Maybe it was the Colorado law, but I don't think so for some reason. Where it's a liberal state like that fighting for a parent's right to leave their kids to die after birth.
Yeah,
it was something.
I saw that too.
Like that.
That was an interesting case of. It's not like the law says, we want parents to be able to leave their kid to die after birth. Yeah. It's an implication of the law,
right,
that lifenews.org was drawing out. And I'm not saying that they're wrong exactly. I wouldn't want to speak on that right this second without a little bit more context.
It's a California bill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Extreme pro-abortion bill. Yeah, this is life news. Blah, blah, blah.
It's wicked, and it's a slippery slope.
It comes from the term perinatal, which is a really vague term that could extend to well after a baby is born, as well as before. So yeah, it just, I don't know. My thought was ancient Rome, you had the right as a parent to kill your children or leave your babies outside the wall to die, and it wouldn't be that shocking if one of our laws essentially gave you the same right even after the birth of the baby.
Yeah, we're not far from that.
Yeah.
We're basically already there.
I mean, we are.
Yeah. All right, what else you guys got, if anything?
Yes, I wanted to follow up on Run the Mile You're In and and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So you might remember it's a book I picked up after listening to an interview with Peter Attia on the Drive podcast, which I listen to from time to time. A lot of like what he's into is just dealing with he has an interview on dealing with type 2 diabetes or preempting it, stuff like that. Things that I have particular interest in with my dad and my grandfather having type 2 diabetes and me having been pre-diabetic, and I think having been able to walk that back. So stuff like that. But he occasionally interviews people who have just been on the cutting edge of human performance. So this guy, Ryan Hall, who's a Christian, is the American record holder in both the marathon and half marathon. And it was an interesting interview, and it was a lot of fun. And it seems like it was probably to promote his book, Run the Mile You're In. So I just got the book and started listening to it. And I think I reported last week that it was occasionally kind of woo-woo and weird and in places. And but he just gets weirder and worse as it goes. So he's got a whole chapter on declarations.
So is that anything like an affirmation?
Yeah, it's just the Christian version of declarations. I declare something in Jesus' name. You know. And then he eventually let slip that he's been to Bethel's school of witchcraft and wizardry. So,
all right,
literally. And he may have, like, if I was a little bit more on top of that world, when he talked about his pastor, I may have recognized his name as being a Bethel pastor, but I didn't. But anyhow, yeah, there's some like, and then there are other points in this book that are just like he talks about like the time where he decided to have God as his trainer. And he talks about the time where he went into, I think it was, I'm going to get certain races and things confused. He went into like the Olympic marathon on a 40-day fast.
Whoa.
Or something like that, and crashed.
Yeah.
And?
No kidding. It's just like the super spirituality of this dude just kind of keeps coming through. But then you begin to see it. And he couches it all in the most spiritual terms. But I've been on, I don't know. If you've ever competed in something, you just look at a guy like that and you're like, dude, you're like one of the greatest marathon runners alive. And you went on a 40-day fast going into the Olympics. Do you not understand how bodies work?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any respect for your teammates? Do you have any respect for all of the other runners that would have killed to have had a shot to compete? You took their spot and then you tanked it on purpose because you had a spiritual reason to? What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with you? And you just get a lot of that sort of what is wrong with you. Anyhow, I don't recommend that book at all.
Okay. Good to know.
So
I think last week we were wondering whether maybe his authors or his ghostwriter didn't maybe gussy it up in the wrong direction.
I don't think so. I think he's just that insane.
He's just that insane. Okay.
Yeah. And maybe you have to be a little insane to be a professional marathon runner in the first place, but
yeah.
Eesh.
Yeah, there's insanity that we can learn from and insanity that just makes for a lame, unhelpful book.
Yeah. We talked about, on the Bookening, we talked about, or RE the Bookening, we talked about finishing up reading A Farewell to Arms, just sort of talking about Ukraine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I finished it.
Yep.
That was pretty interesting.
Yep. We'll talk about that on the Bookening.
We'll talk about it. But I started Moby Dick, and that's what I think is exciting. I think people should read that book along with us.
Yeah,
awesome.
It's actually a good book.
Awesome.
Surprisingly, even the parts that feel like,
surprisingly,
oh man, surprisingly, the Great American Novels.
The Great American Novels, yeah. No,
but I mean, come on, that's a book that people respect more than they love. At least they think, if they haven't read it, that's what they expect to do. Or
that's right.
Maybe I should just speak for myself.
That's what I expected to. I was not excited. I would have read it before now if I trusted its place in the canon, but I've mistrusted it. But I'm really enjoying it. There's even at the beginning of the book, there's this little section of extracts. How would you describe that? It's just extracts from all kinds of poems and songs and ancient literature and things like that, talking about whales. And
yeah, it's awesome. It actually reminds me of something that Stephen King does, which I think he probably got from Moby Dick because he was a literature professor. But oftentimes in his books, he'll start with a bunch of like if the story's about UFOs, he'll start with a bunch of extracts on UFOs. Or if it's a vampire book, it'll be like ancient Greece, and it's really effective. Like it really gets you juiced up for the story because you're like, oh, all this primal stuff, you know. This is part of the legacy of.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
And man, he does such a good job in the extracts that he pulls, and who knows if he even made any of them up. It doesn't matter. But
I mean, he didn't have Google, so I wouldn't be surprised if he at least quoted some from memory or, you know, coalesced a little bit.
Yeah, somebody somewhere knows. Brandon probably knows, but
yeah, he'll tell us over on the Bookening. Subscribe, share.
Man, I get so jazzed about re-enchanting myself to the world of monsters. Like sea monsters is really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess in the early chapters, Ishmael says that every man, whether he realizes it or not, deep down is drawn to the sea. And talks about people just sort of, they find their way there. They'll stand and stare at it one way or another.
Yeah, he understands the primal forces within us.
Yeah, and draws it out in a really cool way. It sort of, in a fun way, recaptures some of what I feel like I felt reading Voyage of the Dawn Treader as a kid, which is maybe a really dopey comparison point.
Maybe Voyage of the Dawn Treader captures a little bit of what Moby Dick was doing.
Anyhow, I'm enjoying that book and excited, and I hope people read along with us.
To do that, you go to the Bookening, your favorite podcast app, subscribe, you hit the bell button, I guess. It's not YouTube, you don't have to hit the bell button, but you do all the things. You leave a 5-star review. And Farewell to Arms, you'll just have to listen to the Bookening for us to talk about that thing. I don't know.
Yep.
All right, guys, You support this show, patreon.com/sound of sanity. That's everything. So I don't have to tell you why to support this show because of what you just heard. We just told you for an hour why to support this show. Patreon.com/sound of sanity. Until next time.
Stay sane.